The WWH show. This is a show that asks a series of why, what, and how questions on issues that have national, regional, and global significance and implications. Today we have such a topic to discuss. We have a special guest in our studio whose name is Abel Gashe. He is an author. Recently he wrote a book entitled GPS for America. Today we're going to talk about why African immigrants, including Ethiopian immigrants, are not tapping into the American system. Thank you very much for coming, Abel.
Thank you, Dr. Assegid, for having me. It's a great privilege to be a guest in one of the most powerful, I think, institutions that the Ethiopians are experiencing, ISAT. I have a great respect for this institution. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Lord for allowing us this time and for giving us the opportunity to discuss that the immigrant community in the North America is facing. When I write this book, GPS for America, behind that is my identity as an immigrant in a new land from a country that I love most, Ethiopia. I had to come for educational reasons, but for various reasons I had to stay here, and I have been a student of the socio-political system of the United States. Not even because I come here, even when I was back home, because I have always been fascinated by social constructs like the United States, that things are working and flowing in a better way day by day, even if they have their own issues, especially being from Ethiopia, where we have a land that everybody envies, and we still are trying to figure out how we can become more civilized in our governance, to have peace and prosperity without killing each other. So that is what led me to study this society and probably learn from it, and also transfer the message that I get to my own people and to others who like to learn from it.
Yeah, it's a bold move, and yes, you should have done that, because many of us, we came to the United States, we love this country, but we never used different opportunities to express how much we appreciate this country. Today we got this chance also to talk about your book, and also to talk about the topic why African immigrants have not been utilizing the opportunities they have in this land. By the way, like yours, when I was in Ethiopia, in the early 2000, before I came to the United States, I came here 2005. So before I came here, I used to read the Constitution of the United States, and also the biographies of its presidents. So I have been fascinated about the Constitution, its leaders, and how they built this great system. So today we're going to talk about this great system and why African immigrants are not being able to tap from this system. The first question then is, why millions of people around the world flood to this country, leaving their homeland? What do you think the reason? Because if we take Ethiopians, okay, we came maybe the easiest way into the United States, but there are thousands of people. For example, I know some friends, they went to South Africa and then went to Mexico, and here they risked their life. What is this special place where people leave their homeland and come here?
Yes, that's a very important question to discuss. Before that, I just want to give this key, important, critical value as it relates to Ethiopians. 1400 years ago, when Prophet Muhammad began his Islam religion, there was a lot of prosecution going around. I mean, his followers were not well accepted, and when he wasn't sure how things were going, he had to send more than 40 up to 60 people somewhere where things could be safe. And the country he chose was Ethiopia. And Ethiopia was known for it being peaceful. It is a story that's told even by the Grecians like Homer and Herodotus about how Ethiopia is a peaceful country and just. It is an ironic in time. The irony of time is such that now we're discussing about a country that is receiving us. And at that point I want to make, and I hope God will put us back into our stature where we are receiving others because they come, because they are persecuted, not a time, which this time has to pass in Ethiopia, that her own children are being persecuted and leaving the country and looking somewhere else. That said, I think there are 5 major reasons that I take it from the PBS documentary, why people from the 4 corners of the world want to come to this country. First is freedom of worship. You can worship whatever you want, whichever way you want, and because of the foundational test that church and state are separated, people are allowed to worship whatever they want. That's one critical factor. In fact, the first people who come in Mayflower ship were religious.
Exactly. They were persecuted and they came to this land for freedom of worship. By the way, other countries, you can immigrant there, but you may not be allowed to worship. For example, you find lots of mosques in the United States, even if the mainstream religion is Christianity, because of the freedom you have to worship.
Take the case of Eritrea. When Eritrea seceded from Ethiopia, one thing what the government decided was there would not be any more than 3 religions, that's Catholicism, Orthodox, and Islam. The other religions are banned to this day. And that's why you see the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Protestants leading the country. These are the kind of things you see. And for this very reason, people want to leave, even if they love their country most. The second reason is fear of persecution. Many people, for their political opinions, they are killed. And no other example to mention, but Ethiopians who have, especially since the 1980s, they fled because the government is not tolerant to a different political opinion. And that's what we see today, too, because if you're not up to the expectation of, or within the boundaries and the limits of the government as it is defined there, you face this persecution and you leave. And I'm sure you can find many people who have left for that. There is also freedom of want, they call it. That's, what is to mean is it's economic independence, I think, because there are a lot of economic opportunities where you can work and make or get the kind of resource, financial income independence you can maintain. People live for those reasons, economic reasons. And that's not an easy matter because there are many people who might be fine in their country with their political system and all that, but they come because they have the opportunity to work, get, and support their families the way they want. So that's another one. That's freedom of fear. Freedom from fear is another reason that people live. That's because people are prosecuted for who they are. Especially the Jews had to leave the 1930s of Europe because there was a major wave against, and there was this anti-Semitism movement. They had to leave. By the way, there are 4 different waves of immigration in this country. The period between, from the inception to 1880s, one group is sort of the Anglo-Saxon era, and then there is the 1880 to 1920 where there is this Germans, the French, and they come in. There is a period between 1920 and 1965 is related with like the Jews and others who have been prosecuted. In between 1880 and 20, you'd find the Asian migration flow, but there was the exclusion of Chinese Act was to be done. The 4th wave begins in 1965 after changing the civil rights movement, and actually of these 4 waves, the Ethiopians come in the 4th category, where you see a lot of Ethiopians coming because, well, there was a lot of disturbance back home after the emperor has been dethroned, and many people had to leave in the political movement that we know. These are the 4 different waves. So that's the 4th reason. And the final reason, remember I mentioned 4 reasons why people live. And the 5th reason is a freedom for creativity, for entrepreneurship. There is a lot of opportunity and access for trying the experiments of life and get ahead with that. Whenever you get something to invent or to learn, access for education, and doesn't allow you for that. Entrepreneurship is something that's highly celebrated. Whereas one thing we have to emphasize is that is paradigm of individualism is highly developed here, and because of that, many people choose that. Not necessarily, I'm not talking about Africans, from all parts of the world. It could be the Asians, it could be the Europeans, even the Canadians prefer to come and try it here because they may not like the kind of welfare state that you may find in their own country. So these are the 5 major reasons identified and documented in the PPS document.
Yeah, these are great reasons why people are coming to this country. I can see here the pull and push paradigm here because the push is when your country is not, for example, giving you freedom of expression, when there are political persecutions like in our country, in Ethiopia and somewhere else, people are pushed out. The pull factor is the entrepreneurship here and the opportunities you have here, the economic and other social advantage you may have than your home country, you are pulled to come to this country. So we have this push and pull factors that bring many people
Absolutely.
to the United States. What surprises me is, like many Ethiopians leave Ethiopia because of political reasons.
Yes.
But there are other people who got chances, for example, to go to other free countries in Europe, for example.
Yes.
Once they are there, they still want to come to the United States. I have asked some of my colleagues, you have been already in a free land, okay, in Europe. Why should you come here? And they reason you some of the most important reasons that made them to come to this country. So people, even if they don't have political reasons, they still want to come to the United States.
Yeah. And the major reason is, as I say, is the way the society is structured, the potential. There are actualities that you may not like and you don't want to come, but there are great potential in the way the nation is founded. The spiritual foundation of the nation is amazing. It is not, if you go and read the first few lines of the Declaration of Independence that was ratified in 1776, or the Constitution that is in 1887, what you see there, 1787, sorry, what you find there is amazing spiritual foundation. It says all men are created equal. That's a great thesis. As a thesis to follow, to see it as a vision in the long run to come maybe, but it is something that encourages you, gives you hope. That's one foundational thesis. The second one is all people are endowed some inalienable rights that cannot be taken away, or that should not be taken away from anyone. These are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Then these, when you see them as a guidepost for you to strive for, they give you hope. And these spiritual foundations are not given by man to man. These documents, foundational documents, they are given by God to people. These are very foundational theses that would, for any human being that is spirited, would be a magnet to attract, especially in our time where millions and even billions are under the tyranny of old-fashioned ideologies, or people who want to be powerful at the expense of their own people, willing to kill. You kind of get inspired to see what it means to live in a system where freedom is there, because it is defined as a constitutional and legal right to everybody. That said, though, these are theoretical foundations. If you take the practical side of it, you may find that there is a lot desired from the system, because that's not necessarily true. Even if this nation was established under those major spiritual foundations, blacks were not really human beings in the 1770, because they were slaves. They were held against their will. So the system was not offering them what it defined itself.
By the way, we're going to talk about, for example, the unique features of the United States and what's missing in this union, and so on and so on. Right now, we're talking about why people are flooding to this country, and you mentioned the most important 4 factors, even 5 factors, and that are the very foundational reasons why people are coming. I want to ask you the next question, which is why African immigrants, including Ethiopians, even if they come to the United States in this great land, they haven't integrated themselves. In other hosting countries, for example, in some European countries and somewhere else, you are required to integrate yourself within the system. I mean, you have to drop maybe your past, your unique cultural features when you enter into some hosting countries. In the United States, there is no that kind of pressure. You can still keep your uniqueness. Yes. While embracing the values of the United States. Even if that is the case, it's for your own advantage to integrate within the American system and get out of it as much as you could. So the question is, because I have some data, for example, in recent years, African immigrants doubled. For example, in 2000, there were 800,000 African immigrants. In 2010, 1.6 million African immigrants in the United States. You can see. And also, the African immigrants are one of the most educated groups in the United States. And there is a data, 2/5 of African immigrants have at least a bachelor's degree. And more than 1/3 work in a professional job. Yeah. So you can see that these are well-educated people, millions of African immigrants, but they haven't integrated into the system. They are still isolating themselves. For example, you could be able to see disintegration even within African immigrants. You see the Ghanaian church, the Nigerian church, the Ethiopian church, or the Cote d'Ivoire marketplace, the Ethiopian marketplace, and so on and so forth. Why do you think African immigrants couldn't be able to integrate themselves within the American system?
Well, there are social, political, and historical reasons that might affect this process. Assimilation is a process, in end of this. It is an evolving process. The Migration Study Institute has identified 5 major points, if I may mention them, that are necessary to assimilate in any society for any migrant to go. There are 5 major factors. And first is language proficiency. It's very critical that you have to have the kind of language proficiency you need to go and meet the society, so you can become part of it. The mainstream. The other one is socio-economic factors. There are you have to integrate the socio-economic nature of the society where you live in, so that you would be assimilating into it. This is one major factor that is. So when we mention the socio-economic and political, we're saying in these countries the color issues, they are very important. There are ceilings. Even if you want to assimilate, even if you want to succeed, those might be major reasons. And there are also citizenship and political issues. The political system has its own way of working. You should be able to be part of that political system and grow. To a certain extent, the political system has its own base, but you should push and be proactive, go and join the system to succeed. And there is also the areas that you live in. The American society has its own stratification as to there is the suburb, there is the urban area, there is the inner city. You keep yourself in the inner city, the kind of culture that you follow will be in that area. Whenever people want to grow in terms of their economic performance or want to give their children good education, they move to the suburb areas because so those are the kind of factors that affect. And also the social life, that you can limit yourself to one area. One thing that I see, for example, in our communities, we are so concentrated to our area, and we prefer our own way of living. We're concentrated in our church, we concentrate in our area of business that we do. The area we live, for example, take you can take the Alexander area, the seminary building. Many people, many Ethiopians, they're so highly concentrated. So those are the kind of things that determine if you keep yourself within a certain local, that would be defining the way you assimilate or not assimilate. So these are different factors. So whenever we're thinking about coming and joining any society, it is a two-way street. So it's not just the immigrants. The hosting country and the hosting people should also be willing to accept you and take you in. In some societies, they are more aloof. For example, there are places where the immigrants are kept in a certain camp. They are not allowed, or they may not have as much freedom, like, for example, this country, to come and join with the rest of the population. So there is these major factors affect the way we assimilate. Now, for Africans, there could be a double standard too, because that is related with the historical background of this nation. It is a nation, even if it defines itself to be free, up until 1864, which is the end of the Civil War, 1865, blacks were, or colored people were marketed. That's sponsored by the law itself, because there could be people who could be sold. And that has been a major heritage that we have to carry. We newcomers have to have that in our background. And the current issues that you see, even for the people who were born and raised here, okay, those are barriers to succeed. If there is a double standard for you to come to the job market, it's not without reason that affirmative action was sponsored by the government. It is to help people, colored people, and women for that matter, to have the kind of opportunities that white people would have. So there are social reasons, there are political reasons, there are our own reasons that would not allow us to assimilate and easily flow with the system.
Yeah, I also see that the cultural issues, like we have our own cultural values. I don't mean that we should drop them, but once we are in a hosting country, we should be able to embrace some of the cultural values. It's going to be very difficult to integrate and assimilate ourselves in the host country's culture without embracing the most important cultural values of the host country. I see culture plays a lot, because if you see now, many African immigrants, they live in California, Maryland, Virginia, and in New York.
Yes.
And the majority of African immigrants, they come from Nigeria, Ghana, and Ethiopia, and Kenya.
Yes.
Now you can see that these African immigrants, they are populated in certain states, avoiding many states, and they are also gathering themselves within the same metro area.
Yes.
It's understandable, but from African immigrants' perspective, I think that we're not benefiting, or we're not positioning ourselves to tap into the American system if we don't assimilate, or if we don't integrate ourselves to the system. That doesn't mean that we should drop our cultural values.
No, we don't have to, and we shouldn't. I bet, as you say, this is a common adage called, when you are in Rome, be like Romans. You got to, you are willing, if you're willing to come here and be part of society, you have to join the mainstream to succeed. Simple law. In order to do that, though, you don't have to totally drop your culture, your value system. I think they are very important. And for that matter, those who succeed in this country didn't succeed because they drop what they have. But what they did is they take that and they make sure they can make it, they can use it while they are also becoming part of the mainstream American life. The Jews, the Germans, they had their own cultural values. The Irish still keep celebrating St. Patrick's Day, but they also become part of the American life. And that should work for us too. We have to keep our identity as an Ethiopian, our inner words, that I think very strong culture, ancient value systems that we cannot trade for anything. But that doesn't mean that we should keep ourselves aloof from the society. I think we should be active in the political system. I think one thing, the irony of President Obama coming to the White House is something that should remind us. He is, in a way, second generation immigrant from his father's root. There were many Ethiopians who came before that, and now there is a major Ethiopian population living in the Washington area, LA, Washington, Atlanta, but our participation in the political system is by far lagging as you compare it. So why? You have to ask ourselves, we got to be part of the living citizen of the society. What that means is the political system has its own behavior. We have to understand it. How does this system work? How is the social society structured? What is the social political construct looks like? What does it take for us to go ahead? By the way, while we do this, we also need to mention success stories. I think Ethiopians are very successful entrepreneurial people. There are a lot of success stories to mention. And even as a community, we know how to, I think, bring ourselves together and continue as a community. The case of Esfana in the sport field, the Taito Cultural Center, the different community centers around this area, from the social media people to people. These are the kind of community growth and developments that we see are encouraging ones. And we have very strong Ethiopian community that's flourishing.
It's very important to appreciate our success. Once I read a magazine called Ethio Success, and in that magazine there were around 8 millionaires. Ethiopian millionaires. I think these are just a few of them. The editor, got access to talk to them. But I believe that there are many Ethiopian entrepreneurs who succeeded in the United States. The sad thing is we don't talk about them. Many times we talk about maybe our shortcomings, our failures, our disappointments, rather than talking about the success. We're going to talk about the contribution of diaspora to the union and so on as we talk about how to the solution part. But right now I just want to understand it. Why, for example, why African immigrants don't integrate themselves? For example, why Ghanaians come closer to Nigerians to Ethiopians? Why we don't have that integration among African immigrants? Because you see some kind of integrations somewhere else, Spanish, Jewish, like they come together, integrate themselves. That's power. That's strength in the American system.
I think
why don't we, African immigrants come together and create that political space.
I think that's a very important point, and that is something that we should closely watch and bring ourselves to that. I think part of the reason there is concrete reasons why we're kind of group into ourselves. It is the paradigm of life that we carry. The kind of culture and social strata we came from is kind of conformist and collectivist. Individualism is not a major trait that you want to encourage. Really, you want to make sure that it is respecting elders, making sure that you follow order, and those kind of things have been strongly ingrained in our culture. The same thing for Chinese too, for that matter. But the Eurocentric kind of mentality, especially after Enlightenment and Reformation in Europe, that has changed the mentality of Europeans, because the focus has become into I. The major movements of Reformation by Luther, it focuses around the word I. And that means that individualism is strongly encouraged. In our society, you become part of a family. The family is the focus of attention, if anything, and then there becomes a bigger group. But the individual is not that encouraged the way it is encouraged in the European countries.
Do you think we should keep that cultural attribute? Because for me, yes, we have great collective cultural attributes. For example, respecting elders, supporting one another, it's great. But for me, dashing the individual and just shaping everybody to think and act the same is not helping Africans, collective cultures for that matter. Why I say that? Because in the American system, individual talents, uniqueness are appreciated. If you invent something, the state protects you. For example, you have invention, you have patent, is protected. You become excellent, let's say, in your voice or in the area of sport or book and so on. The media and the community appreciates you, pays you, encourages you, and gives you incentive. That encourages you to do more. What does that mean? That means it makes each and every member of that group important, and that's for the advantage of the group itself. Now, the challenge with communal cultures, there are great cultural attributes that are very important, we should keep. But for example, there are political ideologies like socialism, yes, communism, and so on, that keep people in the same category, denying them their individual uniqueness and talent and passion. In Ethiopia, people are forced to group themselves under their ethnic group so that they won't think beyond their ethnic group. They don't think like they are unique individual. But I think when that's maybe fine, in our own country. But coming to the United States, if we adapt this cultural attribute, this is for our own benefit. We need to encourage each individual African immigrant to seek its unique place while maintaining the collective goal, the collective interest of its group.
I think it is important to take into account the two dimensions. On one side, is extreme individualism and there is extreme conformism. Those two are not good. I think we have to find the middle ground for that. There is a great thing we learn from this society to see how they encourage the individual to succeed. And even in our culture, I think heroes are celebrated too. So it's not like we are learning it from them. We got heroes. I think the kind of heroes that come, Theodorus was a king not because he was from a royal family. He was because he was a hero. It's the same thing, he was a hero of the time. So Ethiopians celebrate their heroes. But I think what we have to do is we should be able to encourage individuals to shine, to come out, to become leaders more. So there is, as I said it earlier, there are some great values as Ethiopians that others are in view of because we have it, because we have a mature civilization, by the way. We're not living because we are legalistic society. I think our society lives because it has very mature value systems. Those we have to keep with us. I think respecting the adults, our humility and all that. But individualism has also its own great things. It encourages people to come out, show their creativity, their entrepreneurship, to take leadership positions, and celebrating individuals for what they have, using their talents, is something that we have to do more. So it is a middle ground that we have to find. By the way, we don't have to forget that the extreme individualism has costed the West a lot, and that we have to also take into account. So that's why we have to rethink what we have to do. It is important that the individual is important in any society, but our collective life, and to think and to work with each other is very important too. It is because right now we're trying to find how to come together as one people, that we are trying into different approach in the political system, in the economic, the social system. So both sides of the spectrum are necessary. The key thing is to have the wisdom to celebrate the individual, while at the same time living together as one people, because we have great history to go back and take from, to live as one people.
I totally agree.